Hello, everyone. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you. Yes, perfect.
Okay, I try to share you my screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. So, hello, everyone. Once again. First of all, I thank you very much for invitation, and I'm glad to be here with you today. My name is Małgorzta Cieszyńska, and my background is the special planning. And today I would like you to share you some of my experience, observation, and research result that I gained writing my master thesis. According to these 3 challenges for the Lublin Citython, my speech will focus mainly on the first and second challenge. So I will talk more about planning cities according to the principles of universal design and creating urban space accessible to pedestrians. I will present several conditions making districts more walkable. Designing spaces where a pedestrian is the basic unit, not a car, is a key to remove car traffic from the city center, and is the key to change thinking about mobility as well. The concept of pedestrian unit as a base in design is more and more important, especially in current world situation, which is COVID-19. And let's now, this is the outline. First, I'm going to present brief theory background. Then I'll share with you some inspirations, which I think are worth to present. They contain many great solutions in one project. After that, I will present some design guidelines based on my research for master thesis. And finally, I summarize my presentation. So let's start. Today's Polish cities are struggling with many changes directly related to their continuous development and striving for the best possible living conditions for their inhabitants. And an important challenge is to understand the city as a whole, its functioning and the needs of its inhabitants. Technological development and increasing mobility have resulted in the domination of automobile-oriented road transport, and the traffic flows began to be defined by the number of lanes and road capacity. An important factor of search for a new way of designing cities was also time and money, which was wasted through long journeys to the workplaces, services, recreation, etc. An element as important as time became the basic for a change in thinking about designing both districts and entire city. Especially nowadays, when the situation in the world has often forced us to change our everyday life and cast restriction of movement, the importance of the nearest surrounding and the way of its development began to be noticed. Let's move to how reclaiming city streets for citizens. First of all, when designing or transforming the streets, we must remember what our goal is to achieve. Our assumption is to design the space, as in the picture on the right, available and visited by the residents. In order to achieve this, you need to remember about 4 conditions. Jeff Speck, in his The General Theory of Walkability, defines these conditions. He said about walk, but generally space, also space to be walking friendly, has to be useful, interesting, safe and comfortable. And each of these features is essential, and none of them is sufficient individually. In practice, we should remember about some necessary solutions. For example, most of the facilities needed to satisfy basic human needs should be located within its area. Services must be close to the place of residence. Roads and sidewalks must be designed so that they are not only safe, but also give a sense of security to workers. It is important that the openings of the space are not too overwhelming and the roads out too wide, thus disturbing the perception of the space. Sites of buildings should encourage, constitute an element of interest and curiosity for pedestrian. On the basis of these criteria, there are quite extreme cases of a part of the city, compact and accessible, the left picture, which supports the promotion of sustainable mobility, and the next one, scattered suburbs that are not pedestrian friendly. And I think it is obvious which model of the city is better for inhabitants. Now let's move on the next part of the trend, sorry. More and more often people start to talk and see that city residents have different needs due to occurrence of phenomena such as discrimination and marginalization of certain social groups and population aging, significant participation of people with disabilities, and the concept of universal design was created. The author of the theory said that universal design is simply a way of designing a building or facility at a little or no extra cost, so it's both attractive and functional for all people, disabled or not. The universal design concept is based on 7 principles of universal design development by the Center of Universal Design of the University of North California, and they are presented on the presentation. But there is also the 8th principle of universal design created by Kalecha, perception of equality. The author describes his principle as different from the others because it focuses on perception and not physical experience. This is why it is so important to look for a solution that facilitate the movement of each resident rather than restriction them already at the planning stage. The city as a place of meetings, work, realization of goals, daily activities determine the life quality of its inhabitants. And now the case studies, inspirations, some inspirations. Case study can be considered on different scale, from small street scale through district to the whole urban system. And the first inspiration is Nonokama Line, part of Fukuoka city subway system. And this is example of a larger investment. The investment has received many awards. For example, Barrier-Free Contributor Award. The final look of the public transport lines and platforms was influenced by citizens of different ages and abilities, thanks to the participation processes in both in the design and execution phases. About the opinion makers were the elderly, pregnant women, adults, and children with disabilities, who defined their preferences for the principles of universal design, including, for example, daylighting, clear and organized station layout. Many specialists were involved in this project, and the designers paid special attention to physical, cognitive, and sensory limitation. And you can see, as you can see in the photographs, they used design solutions. For example, at platforms, extensive uncluttered line and system maps clearly convey critical information to riders. Symbols are used extensively, and individual stations have unique icons to simplify wayfinding and orientation. Lighting levels vary in relation to function of the area. The entrance have tactile maps and guidance strips that lead to the stairs and directly adjacent elevators. Each station has indoor bicycle parking and more. And if someone wants to know more, there is a link in the bottom right corner, right hand corner. The next one example concerns a smaller scale, the building and its surrounding, and this is Richardson Apartments project in the United States. In this multifunction building, additional commercial space has been planned on the first floor to create a place that will be value for the surrounding community. The Richardson Apartments project was part of the larger plan, which was intended to contribute to a more residential community through affordable housing, street upgrades, and retail spaces serving the local community. An important assumption of the project was also the greenery, which is a necessary and needed element in the city space. As users of public spaces, we feel this need mainly in the summer, but not only. The solutions introduced in connection with the idea of universal design were, for example, wide hallways and an open floor plan are used through the building. And the entrance includes a lever threshold, automatic doors, and lever door handles. These are elements that give many people with dysfunction the ability to cope on your own. The project won many awards, including the AIA National Housing Award. And to find out more, the link is also in the corner. And the last example refers to the smallest scale, 6 Sierpnia Street located in Poland, a concept in which safety of the pedestrian is more important than the comfort of the drivers. Is called WUNERV. According to this idea, the street keeps its basic communication function, but at the same time, it is also used as a promenade, parking, meeting, and resting place for residents. WUNERV, as a street to live, designed without a clear separation of pedestrians, cyclists, and cars. So drivers must be particularly careful and drive at much slower speeds. This solution not only increase safety, but also conditions greater freedom to use this space. The design solution, which is WUNERV, is being implemented all over the world. The project assumed the calming of car traffic and introduction of new development elements such as city furniture, bicycle racks, trees, plants, and grass. The level of the sidewalk and the roadway was leveled, curbs were abandoned, and the wide traffic road was used. The transformed road, the Great Street, has become a pedestrian-friendly place, a place to meet and rest on a bench in the shade of trees, and a space attractive for street design and cultural events. The renovated public space attracted with its charm and unique character, which confirmed also the local award. And now I will share with you recommendation on how to design urban space to be accessible and attractive for all users, based on entire of research of my master phases. The different efficiency of the users of the public space should be taken into account, allowing to move freely around without forcing them to avoid certain roads due to stairs without alternative elevator, for example. In addition, information should be presented in an accessible, clear, simple way. And this can be achieved by using sans serif fonts and braille markings, allowing the information to be played in a voice form, or placing the boards low enough for the person in a sitting position or a child. According to another principle of universal design, it is necessary to level out and avoid creating places in the space that may be dangerous, avoiding the choice of collision solutions such as a narrow sidewalk not separated from a road with heavy traffic, without traffic lights, and with high curbs. What's more, already at the design phase, it is necessary to choose solution and create an environment so that it is not only a new and aesthetically desirable, but also useful, functional, and accessible. There are many elements of land use in the city, which are barriers, obstacles for people with disabilities when moving around. It is worth noting that a barrier will be an element that excludes a person with dysfunction from using a given space, access, building, or causes the necessity of assistance. And the obstacles is something that makes difficult to move. Use the area requires more effort, but does not exclude completely. The barriers will be such components as for people with mobility dysfunction, for example, stairs, very steep slopes, and driveways, no adapted toilets, no elevator in the building, unsuitable public transport vehicles, no facilities in the cultural buildings. For vision dysfunction, lack of access to information in the voice form, position with inductive loop, and for people with hear dysfunction, for example, lack of access to full written information, especially in public administration facilities. As you can see, most of elements of the environment can fully exclude a person from public life, and the free use of public space concern people with physical disabilities. However, there are many more obstacles within the city limits. They affect the ease of movement and constantly the willingness to move, especially people with disabilities, as well as other user groups. Obstacles appearing within city limits include narrow, uneven sidewalks or lack of them, high curbs, unmarked walking paths, unmarked stairs, unpaved walking paths, other elements in the width of the sidewalk, if they are located in the middle of the sidewalk, for example, trees, garbage cans, restaurant gardens, and for example, no contract marking on glass barriers, or no benches to rest. And this is necessary to design new spaces, make investments, and introduce changes taking into account existing assumption and specific solution in accordance with universal design. By creating an environment again with a design approach for all, land development will be primarily more functional and useful. And it is important to realize that removing barriers in space that does not serve only one group of people with disabilities. They implement solutions according to the principle of universal design. Although they are supposed to make life and movement in the city easier for people with disabilities, in fact, they improve that quality of movement in the city for all its users. For example, here, raising the crosswalk near the elementary school not only increases the safety of children going to school, but also makes it easier for a person in a wheelchair to move around and places the pedestrian as the user with priority. And widening the sidewalk not only affects the freedom of movement of a wheelchair user or a mother with a child, but also makes it easier for more people to pass by, which increases the attractiveness of pedestrian road. What is more important, space solutions should be enable comfortable use without effort, which means limiting continuous effort of users with disabilities. And this can be achieved using the previously mentioned elevators, driveways with a small angle of inclination, designing a pedestrian road over the shortest distance. The site and location of development element in the area should be appropriate for a user. And this applies to the location of important elements in the space so that they are visible and available for use by everyone, both sitting and standing users. What is more, the principle also refers to element of building equipment, height of light switches, height of handles, dimensions of sanitary rooms, especially in public facilities. Every inhabitant should be able to use a facility in the city equally. The aim should be to have equal opportunities, not to create the entrance for people with disabilities the back of the building, for example. The elimination barriers in the city space not only concern the introduction of amenities and improvements for people with this dysfunction, it is extremely important how they are introduced. Therefore, the principal perception of equality it's so important. And in order to fully eliminate barriers, public consultation should be carried out at an early stage of project. It should be inspired but already introduced, proven and good solutions, such as, for example, the subway in Japan, taking into account the principle of universal design. And summarizing, proven solution in the world show that it is possible to project on a smaller or larger scale, but it is important to planning for the people and in their scale and their capabilities. The research has shown that elements of urban development are very important and have an impact of the availability of pedestrian areas and their declared willingness to move around the city by foot. Generally, statistical research has confirmed that the city centers are more pedestrian friendly than districts on the outskirts. Of course, this is due to many factors, such as car entrance restriction, but paid parking zones, diversified service offer, but we know that it can be changed. Meetings with residents, including people with disabilities, are extremely important and part of the project. The element of consultation in the project is even necessary because the users of the current space know what makes them the most difficult to moving around. Their opinion is essential. And on the basis of my work, conversation and with various space users and observation, I can conclude that there are elements of space development that have a negative impact on all space users, regardless of whether you are a person with disabilities or fully functional person. And I hope that I paid your attention to some problems or aspects of planning urban space. Thank you for your attention.